What's up, everyone? This is Sir Science Bulldog here, and in today's vlog we are going to be discussing viruses, and I'm really pumped and excited for this as viruses are one of my main interests as a microbiology student. We're going to be first, as usual, defining what they are if you're not familiar with them. We're also going to be discussing a few of the ones out there, and we're also going to be discussing a few of the ones that are out there but don't make us sick, right? Because as with bacteria, not all viruses make us particularly sick, but are important for other things. And that's really exciting, and I'd love to get more into that detail, and hopefully I will in the future. Alright, so let's define what a virus is. If you recall from the bacteriology or bacteria blog, bacteria are cells, right? They're kind of living, individual, happy little organisms that do their own thing. Viruses are the opposite, or not exactly the opposite, but they're different. First of all, they're not technically alive per se. They are composed of DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid, all these science words, which is, the blueprints for proteins and other components of the cells and kind of what make us up, right? All the little components that build up to us. So viruses are composed of DNA or RNA. Now, you might not be familiar with the differences, and I'm not going to go into detail for that right now, but let's put it this way. DNA is your code. It's a recipe, right? So you can replicate that recipe to have more recipes, or you can translate that recipe into something that you can then build. And that may seem a bit confusing, but bear with me. So RNA is not a recipe, it's the actual, let's call it the procedure, and you get a result out of this, right? So you do your procedure and you get your cake. That is RNA in a nutshell. So viruses can be either DNA or RNA. And they're not independent. They have to have a host. So a host is any cell, any living cell that is capable of reproducing, metabolizing. So what is metabolizing? It means eating. They're able to eat and provide their own nutrients and energy. So people are perfect hosts. For example, the cells in our lungs are great hosts for influenza viruses, for example. Alright, so they need a host, and what they do is, consider them little packets, right? Consider viruses little packets. These little packets are very, very efficient at attaching to some cells. They're not able to attach to every single cell. That's why, some antiviruses don't infect us. But basically, they're able to attach to cells and then, insert their little DNA or RNA, and these RNA and these, this genetic material is heavily protected because it's kind of a fragile thing. So you need things like little shells. You can call them shells. These shells protect the genetic material until it enters the cell. Once it enters the cell, it does all of these wonky things. So it's able to, make more copies of itself, of the print or blueprint, if you will, and it's also able to create and build itself inside the cell. So that's kind of how viruses reproduce in the cell. They're not capable of doing this on their own, which is why they're not technically considered alive, unfortunately. Alright, so some examples of viruses out there that you may already be aware of are, the flu, influenza, which is the base for a pretty popular game right now, H1Z1, which I have a problem with because H1N1 stands for little attachment sites, little specific attachment sites on the cell of a person or, wherever it's infecting. And there is no Z protein. So that I have a problem with that. So that's influenza. You are already familiar with the flu. And you also have other things such as measles, chickenpox, all these nasty, nasty, nasty little viruses, and of course the most famous or infamous case, smallpox. So smallpox has been completely wiped out. It's the first disease, or the first transmissible infectious disease that has been wiped out from the earth. There are only 2 labs in the world that have live samples for it, USA and Russia. So smallpox, pretty infamous. We might get to a vlog where I talk specifically about smallpox because I read a book about it and I'm pumped for it. So you have measles, smallpox, which has been eradicated. Ebola, for example, is a virus. It's a pretty nasty virus currently ravaging Africa, or the west coast at least of Africa. And I do believe my roommates are talking in the background. That's fine. Let's see what else. So those are examples of bad viruses. You know, some, and I really wish I had more time, and I may do more vlogs to discuss the modes of transmission of viruses because it's really awesome. So once they get inside the body, the problem is, attaching and entering a cell. But how do they get out? Because, sometimes hosts die, unfortunately, as is the case with Ebola or smallpox or any of the other lethal viruses. So they have to find methods of escaping the body and infecting other people, and it's awesome and fascinating. It's kind of nasty sometimes, but, that is life. Let's go on very shortly to an example of good viruses. They're good in the sense that they help us, but they're still killing other cells. And these are known as phages. So you have your T4 phage, T6 phage, whatever phage. They have really weird names. Now, phages are viruses that infect bacteria, and in some countries around the world, they've been used to treat bacterial infections because they find the bacteria, they enter it inside the body. It doesn't harm the body at all, the human body, because it's exclusive to only bacteria. So infect that bacteria and it'll pop, and that'll spread more of these guys that'll treat the infection. So they've discovered a few of these for, I believe, Escherichia coli, which is common for travelers' diarrhea or other foodborne illnesses. They recently found a phage that can infect anthrax bacterium, which is awesome, because that's kind of a scary organism that it's used sometimes in very nasty methods, shall we say. There was a big scare on that in the US, and it's just a nasty bacterium overall. So it's great that they're finding all these alternative medicines for it. So that was a quick example of how that viruses can be good in some senses. We'll definitely talk about viruses in detail. Other vlogs, that is it, unfortunately, for today. So I'll see you guys some other day. Definitely like, share, and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching.